Karen parked in my garage, so I locked the door and destroy her car for punish her. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from. It was just another regular day, or at least it was supposed to be. I'd gotten home from work, feeling the weight of the day's stress slowly lift as I pulled into my driveway. I was looking forward to a quiet evening, maybe a quick snack, then off to relax in my own space. But the moment I turned the corner, I saw it. A car, someone else's car, parked in my garage. Now, I don't know about you, but when someone parks in your designated space, it's not just an inconvenience. It feels like a violation. I mean, I work hard for my stuff, and my garage is no exception. It's not just some place to toss a car and forget about it. No, that's my personal space. It's where I store my tools, my bike, the things I've collected over the years. It's the one part of my house where everything is organized just the way I like it, where I don't have to share it with anyone. So, when I saw that car sitting there, taking up my space, I wasn't just annoyed. I was furious. Whoever this stranger was, they didn't just park in a spot, they were acting like they had the right to be there. And the worst part? They didn't even bother to ask. No note, no call, just boom, parked right in front of my garage door like it was nothing. I could already feel my blood starting to boil. How could someone be so entitled? The audacity to just assume they could park wherever they wanted, without a care in the world. I mean, who does that? It's not like I was asking for much. Just a little respect for other people's space. I pulled into my driveway, expecting the usual empty space where I always park. But instead, there it was, this random car, sitting in my garage. I honestly thought I was seeing things at first. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe it was just some kind of mistake. But no, as I got closer, it became clear. There was no mistake. Someone had parked in my garage. At first, I just stared at the car. It was an older sedan, one of those nondescript models you'd see on any street corner. Nothing fancy, but enough to make my blood pressure rise. I rolled my eyes, thinking maybe it was just someone who'd parked too close to my driveway by accident, but as I looked closer, I saw the door was open. And there, standing by the car with a phone in her hand, was the woman who would soon make me question the sanity of the human race. She didn't seem to notice me at first. She was too busy tapping away on her phone, like she owned the place. It wasn't until I was right there, practically standing next to her, that she finally looked up. She gave me a quick glance, then went right back to whatever she was doing on her phone, completely oblivious to the fact that she was parked in someone's garage. I felt a mix of disbelief and irritation rising in my chest. Who does this? I thought. Who just parks in someone else's garage without asking? My heart started racing. I felt a twinge of frustration, but I didn't want to let it get the best of me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but I could already feel my patience wearing thin. I stood there for a moment, waiting to see if maybe she'd just move her car. Maybe she didn't realize what she'd done, right? But as the seconds passed, she didn't budge. That's when I knew I was going to have to confront her. There was no other choice. I walked up to the car, and as I got closer, I could see she was still too wrapped up in her phone to care. I was pissed, no doubt, but I was also trying to keep it together, trying to approach the situation calmly. But deep down, all I wanted to do was scream. I could feel my hands balling into fists as I stopped right next to her. It was the moment of truth. Would she be reasonable? Would she apologize, admit her mistake, and move on? But when I opened my mouth, I wasn't prepared for what was coming. I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady as I approached her car. Hey, excuse me, but you're parked in my garage. She didn't look up at first. Just kept fiddling with her phone, tapping away as if I wasn't even standing there. I repeated myself, a bit louder this time. You're in my garage. Could you move your car? Finally, she glanced up, but not with any urgency or concern. No apology, no sense of awareness, just an eye roll that sent my blood pressure soaring. She slowly put her phone down and gave me a once-over, like I was the one who had done something wrong. Yeah, I see that, she said, shrugging. But I'm just running a quick errand. I'll be out of here in a minute. I couldn't believe it. She actually thought that was enough of an excuse. She was literally telling me that she had the right to park in my garage just because she wasn't going to be long. The audacity. It's not like I had been asking for a favor. I wasn't asking her to park somewhere else for a minute. I was asking her to move her car out of a space that belonged to me, something that any reasonable person would understand. But she wasn't done. She gave a little chuckle, as if to mock me, and then shrugged again. You don't need to be so dramatic. It's just a parking spot. She waved her hand dismissively like I was making a big deal out of nothing. That's when it really hit me. I could feel my frustration building up, tight in my chest, and suddenly, I realized she wasn't even going to try to make things right. This wasn't just about a car in my garage anymore. This was about her complete and utter disregard for my space, my time, and my rights. She wasn't going to apologize or take responsibility for her actions. She was treating me like I was the inconvenience in the situation. I stared at her for a moment, trying to keep my cool. The more I thought about it, the more I felt this fire inside of me. She was acting like she was entitled to everything, like my garage was just another place for her to take over without a second thought. As the tension between us grew, I started thinking, what could I do to make her understand? I could yell, sure, but that wouldn't teach her anything. I could just let her go, but that didn't feel right either. She didn't deserve the luxury of just driving off after acting like that. And that's when the thought hit me. What if I locked her in? What if I just closed the door? Let her sit there and really think about what she'd done, about how little she cared for other people's space. Maybe then, she'd learn a lesson. I wasn't going to let her just get away with it. I looked at the garage door, then back at her, and I knew what I had to do. I stood there for a second, the decision weighing on me. Could I really do this? Could I lock her in? Part of me hesitated, thinking that maybe I should just let it go, but the more I thought about how she had treated me, how she hadn't even attempted to understand what she was doing, the more it felt like I was justified. This wasn't about a petty parking dispute anymore. This was about standing up for myself, for my space, and showing her that actions have consequences. Without another moment's hesitation, I grabbed the garage door remote and hit the button. The door slowly began to descend, and I watched as the gap between the ground and the door shrank, trapping her in. She didn't even realize what was happening at first. She was still fiddling with her phone, completely unaware that I was locking her in. By the time she looked up and noticed the door moving, it was already too late. She scrambled out of her seat, her eyes wide with confusion. "What the hell?" she shouted, standing up and rushing toward the door. "Hey, what are you doing? Let me out of here." I didn't say a word. I just stood there, watching her flail against the door, trying to lift it as if it were going to budge. She pulled on the handle, rattled the doorframe, but nothing worked. The garage was locked, and there was no way for her to get out. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of satisfaction, but it was quickly replaced by the sound of her voice, now dripping with anger. "This is insane. You can't just lock me in here. Let me out right now, or I'll call the cops." I stood there silently, not feeling any need to respond. Her desperation only seemed to escalate as she realized there was no quick escape. She pounded on the door, shouting threats and insults. "You don't know who I am. I'll have you arrested for this," she yelled, her voice cracking with frustration. But I didn't move. I let her shout all she wanted. The more she yelled, the more it felt like she was digging her own hole. She was getting louder, angrier, but I was calm. At this point, it was clear she wasn't taking this seriously, and I couldn't just let her get away with treating people like they were beneath her. Then, the moment she probably wasn't expecting arrived, she glanced out the window and saw her car still sitting there. I knew that, just like the garage, her car was something she probably took for granted. It was her little world of entitlement, her thing she thought she could control without any regard for others. And that's when the reality of the situation seemed to hit her. I'm not sure if it was the panic setting in or the realization of how bad this had gotten, but it was clear she was now aware of what was going on. She immediately began pacing back and forth, but there was no sign of her actually getting out anytime soon. Her phone was gone, likely tossed aside in her frenzy. And then I made my decision. I knew I couldn't just leave it at locking her in. I wasn't going to do anything irreversible, but I wasn't about to let her car sit there untouched either. I walked over to her car, feeling a rush of adrenaline as I approached it. The damage wasn't about to be catastrophic, but it was meant to send a message. I grabbed a small, heavy object that had been sitting in the corner of the garage, something I'd been meaning to get rid of anyway. Without a second thought, I took it and, with a firm swing, hit her car's side mirror. The glass cracked, the plastic housing shattered, and it felt like a small release of all the anger that had been building inside me. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send the message: you can't just walk all over people and expect no consequences. I stepped back, looking at the damage. Her car was still in one piece, but that mirror, broken, hanging loosely, was a symbol of her disregard for boundaries. I turned to face her, knowing that by now, she had probably seen what I'd done. I wasn't sure how she'd react, but I didn't care anymore. She'd pushed me to this point, and now there was no turning back. Standing there, watching her car with that broken mirror, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. There was a part of me that felt a sense of satisfaction, like I had finally made her realize that her actions had consequences. I had made a point, taught her that you can't just take someone's space, treat them like they're invisible, and expect to get away with it. It wasn't the most conventional way to handle things, but it felt like the right thing to do in the moment. But then, as I walked away, I started thinking about it more. Was it really worth it? Sure, she deserved a lesson, but did I go too far? The last thing I wanted was to end up regretting my actions. It wasn't like I had destroyed her car or done anything permanent. Still, there was a lingering thought that I could have just talked to her calmly and gotten the same result without making things escalate this way. In the end, I knew I'd made a point about respect. No one should ever feel entitled to someone else's space without permission. The real takeaway here wasn't just about standing up for myself. It was about making sure that people understand boundaries. We all deserve respect, and when you cross that line, there's a price to pay. Maybe it wasn't about the broken mirror or locking her in the garage, but about the bigger picture, the importance of treating others with decency. When we forget that, things like this happen. Entitlement grows. People feel like they can do whatever they want, and that's when problems like this spiral out of control. So, here's the question. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have let it slide, or would you have stood your ground and done something about it? The next time someone disrespects your space, think about it. Would you be able to handle it with patience, or would you let your frustration take over?